If this were baseball, they might say House Republicans are painting the corners when it comes to changing the tax code. If we're talking about Clayton Kershaw of the Los Angeles Dodgers or Johnny Cueto of the Cincinnati Reds, that's a good thing. Those guys fire strikes that just nip the black of home plate. This fools batters. Hitters don't know whether to swing or not. Make an offering and you might not even neck the pitch as it crosses the plate. Sit back on your heels and take the pitch. Well, frozen pizza. You risk being hung up on strikes on a pitch that just catches the strike zone. Painting the corners. House Republicans approved a surfeit of tax reform measures recently, all tied thematically to Tax Day, April 15th. Republicans voted to eliminate the so-called death tax, the penalty wealthy families pay in real estate and other holdings when a relative dies. They voted on a taxpayer's bill of rights to give Americans more options when dealing with the IRS. They approved a measure to allow for additional fairness when deducting state and local taxes. Finally, the House okayed a plan to make permanent the deduction of those taxes. I think we've got a better approach on the Republican side. Reduce the tax burden that American families have to pay and raise their incomes through a better economy and better jobs, trumpeted House Speaker Representative John Boehner, Ohio. With Tax Day right around the corner, I certainly heard a lot about taxes, and the question as to when Congress is going to pass tax reform, which across the board, people recognize as long overdue, opined House Republican Conference Chairwoman Kathy Representative McMorris Rogers. Are washed. We really do need a tax code that puts people first. All well and good. Except these exercises are far from fundamentally reforming the nation's tax system. In other words, Republicans mimicked Clayton Kershaw or Johnny Cueto, painting the corners. They were at the edges of the plate when it comes to tax policy. But executing a major retrench of the nation's tax laws isn't baseball. Republicans and many Democrats have crowed for decades that Congress needs to drastically overhaul America's tax system. Congress hasn't ushered to passage a major piece of tax reform legislation since 1986. And to do tax reform, lawmakers can't niggle around the edges of the plate like Messrs. Kershaw and Cueto. No. They need to take a different approach and serve up the real watermelon, right down Broadway. Down the heart of the plate. Such an approach is precisely the opposite tactic pitchers want to take with good hitters like Mike Trout or Giancarlo Stanton. But dusting the corners won't work when it comes to tax reform. Everything is on the table except raising taxes, declared House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Representative Paul Ryan, Wisconsin, when asked by reporters at a recent forum about what shape a potential tax reform package might take. Ryan's the guy to ask. He, along with Senate Finance Committee Chairman Senator Orrin Hatch, Utah, would be tasked with crafting a big tax reform bill. But in a similar setting with scribes over the winter, Ryan signaled that even though we're not even 4 months into the 114th Congress, time for a major bill is already running short. Tax reform is a 2015 thing for sure, said Ryan when asked about a possible timetable. It has to be done by the end of the summer. If it goes back past summer, it's hard to see how that gets done. Ryan believes that tax reform must be comprehensive. Reporters asked him if it was possible to alter some specific tax areas in lieu of a grand package. I don't think it's helpful to do tax reform overall if you carve out sections, said Ryan about changing some overseas business rates. If you just do a narrow, international bill, that may make it harder to do tax reform later. So what is Congress left with? Painting the corners, which is what the House voted on last week, timing the votes to coincide with April 15th. I think we're going to reform this tax code sometime between 1 and 3 years from now, said Ryan, even arguing that tax reform was the real way to fix the Internal Revenue Service. But don't doubt Ryan's determination to do tax reform in the near future. In fact, he said one of the reasons he elected to forego the presidential bid next year was because of his commitment to offering tax reform. I see a window of getting things done and I don't want to be clouded by running for president, Ryan said. Reforming the tax code resides as one of the most powerful mantras of the GOP. But it's an elusive goal. The revolutionary, Republican House and Senate of the mid-1990s didn't pull it off. Nor did Republicans when they had President George W. Bush in the White House for 6 years. Perhaps not reforming the tax code actually works to the GOP's advantage. Consider all of the various tax reform ideas spewing from bona fide or possible Republican presidential candidates. The GOP seemingly owns the tax issue. Presidential hopefuls can't talk 80 notion about fixing the tax code, eliminating shelters, lowering rates, making the code flatter and fairer, and yet hold none of the responsibility, because it makes for a fabulous issue, be it on the presidential stump or campaigning for a House seat at a fire department fish fry.